Okay, let's take a look at market value. So market value, as the current rulebook describes, market value determines a player's worth. There is no limit on the money that can be given at a player, except players cannot move up the star ladder twice if market value does not warrant it. Okay, so the way market value is calculated, it's basically like fantasy football. We award points for stats over the course of the season and how important those stats are to a specific player and position. That's correct, T-Pat. The guaranteed money and bonus money was wiped away, I think, after Season 2. Just too complex. So market value, we're looking to establish players' worth. Because in our league, which is what we didn't have previously, in our league, players have a voice. They have a voice in their contract negotiations, but it's not my voice. Ramos Lynn asked if Rocco Marconi will want $24 million next year. The max money that you can offer is $5 million, so Marconi will want $5 million, and that's basically what that is. And that's a good point. Because Marconi was the MVP, because he broke every record in the book, his market value is now higher than everybody else's. So his market value is $5 million. Now, if that player does not have an option on his contract, if he's under a 2-year deal, and after the first year his market value is $5 million, and he doesn't have an option on his contract and he's only getting paid $3 million, you will continue to be able to pay him $3 million. It's a contract. It's an ironclad deal. You paid him, 2 years, $6 million salary, $3 million a year. His market value is $5 million, but if there's no option in that contract, then he's going to continue to get paid $3 million, and you get the bargain. But if there's a player opt-out in that player's contract, that 2-year, $6 million contract, he's getting paid $3 million a season, and his market value is $5 million. If there is a player opt-out on his contract, it'll go into effect after the first year, halfway through a 2-year contract, halfway through a 4-year contract, and after the second year of a 3-year contract. And that player will walk because he is scheduled to get paid $3 million from you next season, and he believes he's worth $5 million. So due to market value, that player is going to say, bye-bye, you can go after me and give me more money in free agency, but I believe that I can get more than that. And I'm not going to sit around and wait for you to give me more. I'm going to test the market because I feel like that's the best situation for me. T-Pat says that he doesn't have a player opt-out, and he's right. He doesn't. Now, you have to Oh, that's a good idea. Kyle says I should put the chat up on the screen so people can see what everyone's talking about later. So I will do that. So back to the tracker. If you have a player opt-out, which on the off-season tracker, it's in green. Okay, so for example, Koma Kaleka has a player opt-out on the second year of a 3-year deal. After the summer season, if Koma Kaleka is deemed that his market value is over $2 million, Kaleka will go into free agency, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what the disadvantage of having a player opt-out is, and each team is required to put a player opt-out on one player. Now, if you have a team opt-out, that's in red. The team opt-out has nothing to do with market value. That is all up to you and your decision. If Donald Miller, for example, has a team opt-out for Minneapolis this year, $1.1 million. It doesn't matter what he's worth or what market value deems he's worth. If T-Pat does not want to honor the second year of the contract, he can opt out of Miller's deal. That wipes away the previous contract. He gets not only the $1.1 million back from this past season, but he gets the other $1.1 million that he had invested in future contracts. And Miller enters as an unrestricted free agent. If Miller, for example, was a restricted free agent and he was let go by the team, that contract is void and he becomes an unrestricted free agent. Yeah, so player decisions is all determined by, at least in contract negotiations, is all determined by market value. Now, going over the third option, which is the option to restructure, that's yellow on the tracker. So let's go to Yuya Iba, for example. What current chart, TJ Cag? I'll move on until TJ Cag can answer. So Iba has an option to restructure on his deal. He's scheduled to get paid $1.5 million next year. If Iba's market value is 1.2, that's a 5. That's a 5 for Marconi on the screen. 555 down the line for Marconi. Sorry if it's here. Let me blow it up. Ta-da! Okay, let's go to Honolulu here. So Honolulu has an option to restructure on Iba 1.5. If his market value is 1.2, it's Iba's choice. Iba's going to say, okay, I'll take the second year of that contract, 1.5 million, because that's a sweet deal for Iba. He's getting an extra 300 grand more than maybe what he's worth. True Shot Caller 1 has a question. What's to stop me from putting a team opt-out on every contract? The only thing I can think of is the players receive a bidding offer that doesn't have one and the player wants the sure money. Sorry, I had to cough. You can only put a team opt-out on one player. That's a restriction. You can't. It's a rule that you're only allowed to put the team opt-out on, or I'm sorry, you're required to put one player opt-out on your team, and you can only put 2 team opt-outs on your team. You can't put more than that. It's over the rules. Now, Lou Wolfpack asks, what player? It doesn't matter what player. You're right, it doesn't matter what player. Now, you can't put any options on a 1-year deal, like Rex Norton here. You can't put any options on a 1-year deal, as far as red, green, yellow, because that's not a multi-year contract. And these options come in at the end or halfway through a contract, and we don't do options halfway through a season. That's only 4 games. We used to. Again, too complex, like guaranteed money. Yeah, there are rules. Here, let's go back to them. Here's the contract specifics, and I'll just read those off, okay? And I will I'll zoom in here so everyone can see. I'm just going to read off the contract information, and then I can take some questions. So each team must sign 2 golds, 3 silvers, and 5 bronzes to their lineup. Bronze Star Legend offensive linemen make up your 11th spot, by the way, in case you were wondering on the roster. Teams agree to sign Legend linemen under 2-season deals. Their contracts do not affect team salary caps. We choose Legend offensive linemen because they don't occur any stats in the game. And we want our own players to be the focus of the operation as much as possible. Bronze players can sign 1 or 2 season deals and can have 0 to 1 attributes. They don't have to have an attribute. At 0 attribute, a player costs at minimum $500,000 per season. And each attribute a player receives costs $1 million per season, regardless of whether the player signs with the team. So if a guy gets hurt and you sign a guy in week 8, 1 year, $1 million deal if he's got an attribute. Yes, you're forced to get a Legend offensive lineman. True shot caller, yes, correct. Whoever you pick, although if they are already taken by someone in the league, then they cannot be picked. And I have to look back to see if this is the year that everyone repicks, or if this is the second year of 2-year deals of current offensive linemen, in which case you would have a limited number to choose from. Okay, back to the deals. So bronze players sign 1 or 2 season deals. Silver players can sign 2 or 3 season deals and can have 0 to 2 attributes. Silver players cannot sign 1-year deals. They're multi-year players. They're there to make that. They're going to make more money. They're going to be more talented. You're going to want those players locked up. Gold players can sign 3 or 4 season deals and have 0 to 5 attributes. You almost never see a superstar sign a 1 or 2-year deal unless they're at the end of their career. And there are ways to sign gold star players, to 1-year deals. We'll get to that in a minute. Darth Destro MD, happy to have you along. Yeah, T-Pat makes a good point. Yeah, again, you can't give these options to single-year contracts. In-season contracts are minimum option contracts, so this is if you sign a person during the season. Assigning a player in season calls for a franchise tag option if one is available, and unrestricted free agent status. No player, team, or restructure options can be applied to said contracts. I think that there are 12 total offensive linemen. If there's not, we'll address that ASAP. But if the expansion teams get left with quote unquote the scraps, think about it this way: expansion teams, you're getting 7, 8, 9 rookies on your team to build your team however you want. You're already at a pretty nice advantage coming into the league fresh. So. And whether or not they make a big difference in the game or not is really debatable. Can anybody rev up their All Pro right now? If not, I can rev it up and I can take a look at it. Okay, let's move on to the contract specifics while we try to figure that out. So as I've been saying, player contracts can have options applied to them, player, team, and restructure, and can also apply 2 options, restricted and franchise tag, to the end of their contract. We haven't gone over that yet. Options cannot be applied to 1-season deals, as mentioned. Options kick in after the first season of a 2-season deal and after the second season of a 3 or 4-season deal, and we've talked about that. Options are applied to contracts after players are signed via free agency, rookie draft, or contract option periods. So, owners, if you're a returning owner, your team, you'll in free agency, you'll offer a guy 2-year, $4 million, but it won't. We don't mess with player options at that time or contract options in general because of its complexity. We'll do that at the very end of the off season where we finalize all contracts, all new contracts from the off season. Okay, I'm gonna fire up All Pros, see what we got. Okay, so again, this is just a little overview. The player option is required on 1-star contract. When the option goes into effect, the player can choose whether or not to opt into the remainder of his contract. The player will determine his status by his market value. See market value section for more details, and we've gone over that already. If his market value is lower than his future contract money, the player will opt in. If it's higher, he will opt out. Teams cannot protect the player in any way once the player decides to opt out. It will be, Darth, and I'm going to upload it to YouTube as well. Good point, TJ. Fairly irrelevant compared to the other 10 players, and that is true. Okay, I'm looking to see what we've got. Yeah, you're right. There's only 11 bronze linemen. So that means that we'll need a rule change proposal in regards to, can a player be taken twice? It probably should be that no legend lineman can be in the same division. So you'll have a legend lineman, maybe in Division 1 and Division 2, but he's only on a max of 2 teams and in the opposite division. Yeah, if that's the case, then the rookie teams would be allowed to choose an existing player as long as that player was not in their division, which we'll find out divisions tomorrow. Lou Wolfpack asks, what will determine draft order? We'll do that randomly. We'll just put the logos on the screen, shuffle them. By the way, the divisions are set, and the Week 1 schedule is set. How awesome is that? Okay, moving back to option overviews. The team option can be applied to up to 2 contracts. When the option goes into effect, teams can choose whether or not they want to keep the player through the full length of his contract. If opting out, there is no money owed by the team and no obligation to the player's previous deal. The player enters free agency as an unrestricted free agent. If opting in, the current deal in place simply continues. The option to restructure is required on 1-star contract. When the option goes into effect, the player can choose whether to attempt to restructure his deal with his current team or whether to keep his current contract in place. And these are details that we've not discussed yet. Teams, in turn, can choose whether or not to accept the player's new proposal or reject it, which sends the player into free agency as unrestricted. That player cannot be pursued in free agency by the team in question, as they violated that contract's policy by not honoring the restructure clause. If teams accept the offer, they can choose to accept the new value of the player for the remainder of his current contract or extend the player to a long-term deal under his new value. So we've gone over the option to restructure, the player opt-out, and the team opt-out. Does anyone have any questions at this point?